David was a 55-year-old man who had spent his entire life working long shifts and sacrificing comforts to raise his only son, Michael. From the day Michael was born, David promised himself he would give his boy everything he never had. Every extra dollar he earned, every overtime hour he worked, a small portion went into a savings account labeled with one dream: Michael's future wedding. By the time Michael turned 25, David had saved nearly $40,000. When Michael announced that he had proposed to Emily, his 23-year-old fiancée, David felt an overwhelming joy. He hugged his son tightly and told him the truth about the savings. "Son, this money is yours, for your wedding, for your new life," David said, his voice trembling with pride. Michael's eyes welled with tears, and he hugged his father, whispering, "Dad, I don't know what to say. You've always been there for me." At that moment, David believed all his sacrifices had been worth it. As wedding plans began, David eagerly looked forward to being part of every step. Susan, his ex-wife and Michael's mother, was also involved, and despite their differences, David thought they could work together to make the day perfect for their son. Emily seemed sweet but often kept her distance from David. Still, he brushed it off, thinking it was just nerves or stress from wedding planning. Weeks turned into months, and David started noticing something strange. He was being left out of decisions. There were dinners and meetings he wasn't invited to. The rehearsal dinner came and went, and David only found out through a distant relative that he hadn't been included. Confused and hurt, he approached Michael one evening. "Michael, why wasn't I at the rehearsal dinner?" he asked softly. Michael shifted uncomfortably and avoided his father's gaze. "Dad, it's just complicated. Emily's family feels like it would be easier if you weren't so involved. It's not personal, it's just, you know how things are." David's heart sank. For decades, he had given everything to this boy, and now he was being pushed aside. His mother, Ellen, a wise woman of 78, saw the pain in her son's eyes. "Don't let them treat you like this, David," she warned gently. "You've given too much to be cast aside." David shook his head, fighting back tears. "But he's my son, Mom, my only son. How do I walk away from that?" The night before the wedding, David sat alone in his living room, staring at old photo albums of Michael as a boy. He remembered the nights he had worked double shifts just to buy his son a birthday gift. The afternoons he skipped meals so Michael could have what he needed. And now, on the eve of his son's biggest day, David felt more like a stranger than a father. On the wedding day, David dressed in his best suit and drove to the venue, holding a small wrapped gift for Michael and Emily. His heart pounded with hope that maybe things would be different, that maybe he would still be welcomed. But when he reached the door, Michael stood waiting. His expression was cold. "Dad, I don't want you here. Please leave." The words hit David like a knife. He froze, staring at his son in disbelief. "Michael, I paid for this day. I've been waiting for this moment my entire life. How can you do this to me?" Michael's jaw tightened. "It's not about the money. It's about family, and it's just better if you're not here." David turned away in silence. He drove home, numb, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. When he walked through the door, he placed a thick envelope of receipts on the table. Every payment he had made for that wedding was in there. The venue deposit, the catering bill, the flowers, the tuxedos. Slowly, his pain turned to resolve. One by one, David picked up the phone and called each vendor. His voice was steady but firm. "Cancel the catering. Cancel the flowers. Cancel every order under my name." On the other end of the line, vendors gasped in surprise. But David didn't falter. By the time the guests had arrived at the wedding, chaos unfolded. The food never came. The flowers were gone. Decorations vanished. What was supposed to be a perfect day became a disorganized mess. Michael panicked, running around trying to explain the disaster. Guests whispered in confusion. Emily's family was furious, but David sat quietly at home, staring at the clock. knowing he had taken back not just his money, but his blessing. A week later, Michael stormed into David's house with Emily by his side. His face was red with anger. "How could you ruin my wedding, Dad? Do you know what you did?" David looked up calmly, though his heart still ached. "How could you ruin our family, Michael? You pushed me away. You made me an outsider in your life." Emily said nothing, her eyes downcast, clearly regretting the role she had played. Michael stood frozen, torn between anger and guilt. David's words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. "Respect is the foundation of family. I gave you everything, Michael, but when you told me I wasn't welcome, you broke something in me that money could never fix." The room fell silent. Michael had no answer. The truth had been laid bare. David never got an apology that day. Maybe it would come later. Maybe it never would. But he knew one thing for certain. Love is built on respect, not blood alone. And when respect is broken, sometimes love has to take a stand. So, was David wrong for taking back what was his? Or was this the only way to teach his son the value of family? That's the question this story leaves behind. Because in the end, weddings last a day, but family, if cared for, can last a lifetime.